So good evening, everyone. Venerable Children's away, and she may be back next week. Well, I'm not sure if she'll be jet-lagged, though, so we're having a review tonight. So we'll start, as we usually do, with some silent meditation. So it would be good to lower your eyes and sit comfortably, and I'll lead us through a little body scan and some breathing meditation to start with. Become aware of your body in the room that you're in, making contact with the floor and the cushion and the chair, and your hands in your lap. So tune into your body. Now pay attention to the physical sensations in your body, and we'll start with our legs, our thighs, our calves, our feet. You just scan those areas with your mind's eye. And if you feel any areas of tension or pain, try to release those. You can gently breathe through them. And now turn your attention to your belly. Again, breathe through any areas of pain or tension. And now turn your attention to your back, your shoulders, your arms. If you have tension in your shoulders, you can lift your shoulders up, kind of tuck your head at the same time, and then let your shoulders drop. And it helps to do that a couple of times. Feel the sensations, and let any areas of tension just be heavy, but still remain firm in your posture. And now become aware of your scalp and your neck, your face, your eyes, your jaw muscles. Really allow these areas to relax. It's helpful to make a little half smile. This sometimes helps the muscles to relax. Just let everything be soft. And now gently turn your awareness to the physical sensations of breathing. You can feel the breath coursing through the whole body, or pay attention to the upper lip and the tip of the nostrils, or to your belly rising and falling. Pick one of those places. Gently become aware and make that your object. If your attention wanders away, just very gently bring it back. Enjoy breathing. There's nothing else to be done, so we'll take a few minutes to do this. Now in your mind's eye, visualize in the space in front of you on a precious throne, both high and wide, supported by 8 great snow lions. On a seat of multicolored lotus, moon and sun discs, is my kind main spiritual mentor in the form of the conqueror Shakyamuni. color of his body is pure gold. On his head is the crown protuberance. He has one face and two hands. And the right hand touches the earth, and the left is in the meditation posture, holding an alms bowl full of nectar. Elegantly, he wears the 3 saffron-colored monastic robes. His body, made of pure light and adorned with the signs and marks of a Buddha, emanates a flood of light in all directions. Sitting in the Vajra posture, he is surrounded by my direct and indirect spiritual mentors, by deities, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, heroes, heroines, and an assembly of Arya Dharma protectors. In front of him, on exquisite stands, are his teachings in the form of books made of light. And the members of the merit field look upon me with kindness, compassion, and contentment. In turn, at the thought of their compassion and virtue, I have great faith and trust in them. So now think, I and all sentient beings, my mothers from beginningless time until now, have continuously undergone the dukkha of cyclic existence in general, and the suffering of the 3 lower realms in particular. Nevertheless, it is difficult still to fathom the depths and breadth of this misery. Now that I have attained a precious human life so difficult to attain and so meaningful once acquired, if I do not realize supreme liberation, in which all the dukkha of samsara is overcome, Guru Buddhahood, then once again I will have to experience the various torments of cyclic existence in general, and those of the 3 lower realms in particular. As I now have before me the spiritual mentor and the 3 jewels, who can protect me from this pain, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, I will do all I can to realize precious, perfect, and consummate Buddhahood. To this end, from the depth of my heart, I take refuge in the spiritual mentors and in the 3 jewels. And I will continue with the recitations on the, we're in the Pearl of Wisdom Blue Book, page 28. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by engaging in generosity and the other far-reaching practices, may I attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. We'll recite the four immeasurables. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings not be separated from sorrowless bliss. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment, and anger. And now we'll insert the verse from our text, which maybe you don't have in front of you. So I'll read it for us to contemplate. In particular, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, by all means I will quickly, very quickly, realize perfect, consummate Buddhahood. To that end, I will now meditate on the stages of the path to awakening by the means of the profound practice of Guru Deity Yoga. So we're sitting in the presence of the Buddha and all the holy beings. So imagine that all sentient beings are seated around you and that you're leading them as we do the seven-limb prayer. And we'll pause after each verse. So as we do each of these, you want to generate the feelings. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. So now you want to imagine that you and all the living beings around you, as far as space, that we're all bowing to the Buddha together. And we do this with an awareness of the Buddha's incredible qualities, and with a sense of respect and humility in their presence. And present clouds of every type of offering, actual and mentally transformed. So offer all the offerings on your altar. Imagine the entire sky filled with beautiful offerings. Anything you consider beautiful, imagine filling the sky with it. And then take delight in offering these to all the holy beings. And they're accepting it and experiencing great bliss. I confess all my destructive actions accumulated since beginningless time. So think of things in your life that you've done that you have regret for. In the presence of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, mentally own those actions, take responsibility for them, and make a determination not to do them again. So just put them down. Release any guilt. And rejoice in the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. So now take a moment to think of all the goodness in the world, created by holy beings and all other beings. You can think about how much people help each other. How people have good motivations and are assisting others with that motivation. So make your mind happy and rejoice. Please remain until cyclic exents. So now we request our teachers and the Buddha to be here and guide us, wishing that they'll live long and that the Buddhas will always manifest. So we offer golden double dorje many times to all the Buddhas, our teachers. So we need their guidance, so make that request deeply in your heart. And turn the wheel of Dharma for sentient beings. So now we offer a 1,000-spoke golden Dharma wheel, making this request that they teach, make the offering many times. I dedicate all the virtues of myself and others to the Great Awakening. So all this merit that we've created, we now offer and share it with all living beings. And now we're going to imagine the universe and everything beautiful in it. We offer this to the Triple Gem without any attachment. So think of the entire universe and everything in it. Multiply many times without any sense of loss, any feeling of poverty. Just let your heart be open and take delight in giving. A spectacular array. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, for land, sun, and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. The objects of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, and strangers, my body, wealth, and enjoyments, I offer these without any sense of loss. Please accept them with pleasure and inspire me and others to be free from the 3 poisonous attitudes. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. So then, as we make these request verses, in the first verse, we think that a replica of the Buddha comes from the Buddha in front of you and sits on the crown of your head, facing the same direction as you. So this Buddha on the crown of your head is like an advocate, helping you make the request. And in the second verse, we think that all of the holy beings, all this light comes flowing into you from all of the holy beings, filling you. Any kind of obstacles to listening to the teachings and bringing understandings of the teachings are removed. Glorious and precious root Guru, sit upon the lotus and moon seat on my crown, guiding me with your great kindness. Bestow upon me the attainments of your body, speech, and mind, the eyes through whom the vast scriptures are seen, supreme doors for the fortunate who would cross over to spiritual freedom, illuminators whose wise means vibrate with compassion. To the entire line of spiritual mentors I make request. So now we put our hands in this mudra in our lap. And as we say the Buddha's mantra, you visualize the light from the Buddha on the crown of your head just streams into you. White light. Imagine all sentient beings around you also with the Buddha on their head. And the light is flowing into them from the Buddha on their head. All negativities, any kind of actions we've done in the past that we regret, these are all purified. All the understandings of the teachings are realized. So we allow ourselves to be inspired, purified, and receive the understandings of the teachings. So we'll say this mantra 7 times. Shakyamuni Buddha's mantra. Tayata Om Muni Muni Maha Muni Soha. 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 Now, without moving, take a look at your mind, like the feeling tone or the texture of your mind, and compare it to how it was when we first started these recitations and visualization. So I'm going to set a short motivation. These are the words of Lama Tsongkhapa. That which is known as meditation is the act of sustaining an object of meditation in specific subjective aspects by repeatedly focusing your mind upon a virtuous object of meditation. The purpose of this is as follows. From beginningless time, you have been under the control of your mind. Your mind has not been under your control. Furthermore, your mind tended to be obscured by all the afflictions and so forth. Thus, meditation aims to bring this mind, which gives rise to all faults and flaws, under control, and then aims to make it serviceable. Serviceability means you can direct your mind as you wish towards a virtuous object of meditation. You might try to sustain your meditation by jumping to this and that object of meditation. You may consider setting up, according to your wish, a variety of virtuous objects of meditation in no specific order. Though you may do this, you will not be able to take up your object of meditation with this method. Consequently, you will hinder greatly your mind's ability to be directed as you wish towards a virtuous object of meditation. If you have made this a habit from the start, the virtuous practice of your whole lifetime will be flawed. Therefore, from the beginning, firmly determine the definite order and enumeration of whatever objects of meditation you wish to sustain. Then strengthen your will by repeatedly thinking, I will not set up something that is different from what I have determined. Without exceeding or falling short of what you have determined, sustain your meditation with mindfulness and vigilance. So tonight may we focus on the beginning of this easy path, and we do this to learn about the meditation session and what that entails in order to free ourselves of any hindrances, any faults, and to develop all of our good qualities. And may we do this with the wish to become fully awakened, because we're aware of all of the great suffering in the world, of all the various beings. So that was our homework. Venerable had said to us that she wanted us she said this at the beginning of many sessions, that she's leaving it up to us to do the homework. So that was our homework, although probably we could do it in a little shorter period of time. So if you need a guided meditation to remember your homework, there it is. We're going to have to play it a little faster though. Yeah, that was one thing she said. She wanted us to do this daily. And her expectations were that we would attend every class, that we would meditate on what we covered in class. Yeah, basically he was saying if we don't do that, this really won't be of that much benefit. So that was her wish. So the text that we're studying, The Easy Path to Travel to Omniscience, is written by the first Panchant Lama, Panchant Lobsang Choki Gyaltsen, and he lived from 1570 to 1662, approximately. And as we know from our text, he was the abbot of Tashi Lumpo Monastery and the teacher of the 5th Dalai Lama. But also, he wrote the Lama Chopa that we do here at the Abbey. He wrote a very well-known and translated, I believe, the exposition on Mahamudra. And there's an interesting story about his life in a book by Janice Willis called, the book's Enlightening Beings, The Life Stories from the Ganden Oral Tradition. And so just to here's a little bit about him, the author of our text. As can be imagined, the first Panchan's disciples were too numerous to list. To begin with, he was the chief tutor to both the 4th and 5th Dalai Lamas. He also taught and ordained many of the most eminent monks of his day, whether Tibetan or of neighboring countries. And then Jean Smith, in the same book she quotes, he says, he would remain the most prominent teacher of the great incarnations of Tibet and Mongolia for almost 50 years. And it's said that he gave bhikshu ordination to upwards of 50,000 beings, and that if one includes the lay people as well as the monk disciples, his followers numbered at least 100,000. So it's a very interesting read. So it's always good to know a little bit about the author. So this text, the easy path, as Venerable reminded us, the path isn't easy, but it's better than the alternative because it leads us somewhere. And so what she's giving us is an oral transmission. And so as we receive the teachings, and I find this really to be true with this particular text, she said it's like you want to think like you're hearing the text from this great author or from the Buddha. So it's spoken, she reads the text directly to help plant seeds in our mind. So, and on our part, our job is to, she set the motivation for this course. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions, subdue your mind completely. This is the teaching of the Buddha. That was our elevator statement, she said. So this is our task here. So when we start this text, it starts with, at the feet of the Venerable and Holy Masters, indivisible from Shakyamuni Vajradhara, I pay homage continuously with your great compassion. I pray to you to care for me. And so she's asked us to think about how our teachers care for us. And it was not pleasing our egos. This was her comment. Not pampering our egos, but really their job is to teach us and to point out things so that we need to work on in our life. And then it goes on to say, the exposition of the stages of the path to awakening, the profound method leading fortunate beings to Buddhahood, has 2 parts. So the fortunate beings, it's good for us to think about that. And they put that at the beginning of the text so we realize and don't take for granted what's happening in our lives. You know, we have these fantastic Dharma teachings, so we want to take, at the beginning they bring this up in the text so that we'll realize our good fortune and not be complacent. And so when our mind goes to, complaining about anything, we want to try to redirect our mind to something positive. And if you just think about it, what is the most precious thing? Is it a wad of money, or is it the Dharma? That's kind of what she said, my words for how she said it though. So the Dharma is more precious than any riches. So the rest of the talk tonight is pretty much going to be about the very first part of this text. It was kind of the first couple of sessions. But then at the beginning, even of the 3rd session, she was really, in every session, she's been really strong on us doing this meditation on our own. And she mentions briefly the 6 preparatory practices. So in the outline in the text, we're on this very first one, which is how to rely on spiritual mentors, the root of the path. And that had 2 points under it, which was how to conduct the actual meditation session and what to do between the sessions. And so basically at the beginning, although the topic is about how to rely on the spiritual mentors, the first thing that's happening in the Lam Rim is they're teaching us how to meditate so we can do the meditations on the spiritual mentor or any of the other Lam Rim meditations. So this topic is actually quite an important one, and I find myself quite drawn to it, and I was thinking about why that was, and I think it's because I started to meditate at a young age, and it was only when I read this teaching that it was the only time I ever read anything about how to structure a session. So that was a few decades into it, probably 30 years, into starting meditation. I'd have to do the math, but it's a long time. So I've always really appreciated this teaching because, like the part at the beginning, you can kind of just wander around in what you're doing in your sessions, but we're actually, if we follow these, we're actually taught what to do. And so, this covers how to set up your session, what to do in the session, the meaning of the prayers, and the visualization. And so what Geshe Sopa had to say about this is these two topics, how to conduct the actual meditation session and what to do between the meditation sessions, every activity, it covers everything, is what he says. Every activity is included in these two periods. You're either in a meditation session or you're in the between sessions, is how you're dividing your life into these two periods. And so he says if you practice according to the teachings, your whole life will become meaningful. So whatever you do throughout the day and night will be more powerful and concentrated. So that's the value of this teaching, I would say, as a whole. And then in terms of the first point, how to conduct the actual meditation, there were 3 points under it in the outline in our handout. The preliminaries, which are oftentimes called preparation, the actual meditation, which is sometimes also called the actual session, and then the conclusion. And Geshe Sopa again says it's important to recognize that no matter what topic you actually meditate on, the activities of preparation and the conclusion are critical elements of the practice. So you want to remember there's these 3 parts to every meditation session: the preliminaries or preparation, the actual session, the actual meditation, and the conclusion. So what are those? We'll just go into them briefly. So at the beginning of our meditation, the preparation, we want to look at our motivation of why we're doing what we're doing. And this involves taking refuge, where we're setting the direction that we're going in our lives. And it involves reaffirming our motivation of bodhicitta, this wish to become fully awakened to benefit all beings. And then in the actual practice, we're meditating on the particular topic of that day. And in that regard, we have to think about, because this is the first thing we're learning about. So, and both here and maybe people that are listening from afar, there's probably people here who didn't hear the first 11 or so talks that Venerable gave. I know that's definitely true for some people in this room. So we have to start at the beginning. And if you're used to this topic, I would encourage you to try to understand the points, because always new people are coming and we need to be able to help them to get started right. So, when we get to the actual practice, it's important to know something about the length of the session. Like, we're always encouraged to stop before your mind feels really tired, so that you'll end with a good feeling about meditation. And especially if you're doing this on your own. Don't try to go too long when you're first starting, because then you have kind of a bad thought about it and you kind of don't want to do it again. So you don't want to push yourself. And then at the end of the session, we always make a dedication. And as a Mahayana practice, we do this we dedicate the good energy, the merit of the session to attaining full awakening. And also it's good to seal the practice with the contemplation of emptiness, which hasn't really been talked about yet in this particular class. Okay, so then we are at the beginning of the text, and our text starts with, "For the preliminaries, in a place you find pleasant, sit on a comfortable seat in the 8-point posture, or in whatever position is comfortable. Then examine your mind well, and in an especially virtuous state of mind, think." So that's where Venerable started the commentary. So she kind of basically said, before you sit down, make sure you tidy the room. And that's what the 6 preliminary or preparatory practices are involved with, those kind of things that we do before we do the Lamrim meditations. And so these 6 preparatory activities are actually a special Mahayana teaching, and they came from Atisha, and he got them from Sri Lingpa. And so Sri Lingpa was Atisha's Mahayana teacher and taught him the practice of bodhicitta. So he received these instructions from him. So these, what Tsongkhapa says is, these 6 aspects of preparation are the activities of Sir Lingpa. And so what are these 6 preparatory practices? So just to let you know, I'm taking this from Lama Tsongkhapa and Geshe Sopa. My original outline on this was in a different order, and it took me all afternoon to clear up where this was. And best I can say is that, I'll have to go back and see where I got that from, but I think that in the practice that Venerable has given us, she said she abbreviated this, and I think that's where I kind of got mixed up, and that other order gets mixed up. So anyway, I'm going to teach the 6 preparatory practices as they're taught by by Lama Tsongkhapa and Geshe Sopa's commentary, and then, but I'm going to keep what we're doing in this class how we were taught. So the 6 are cleaning the room and arranging the altar. That's the first one. I'll just list them. And then making offerings. So these first 2 things we do before we even sit down, right? And then we sit in the correct meditation posture. We take refuge and generate bodhicitta. That's the 3rd one. The 4th is we visualize the lineage gurus. And the 5th is we contemplate the 7 limbs. That's the 7-limb prayer. And then the 6th is offering the mandala and requesting inspiration from the root and lineage spiritual mentors. So that's what we're going to talk about here. So for the first one, cleaning the shrine room and arranging the altar, or whatever room you're using, you want, Lama Tsongkhapa says, clean well the place where you are staying and neatly arrange the representations of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And in Geshe Sopa's book, he has there's a lot written in both of those texts about these practices. And one thing he said, that the Tibetan expression for this is sweep up and cast out the dirt. And so he really, I think, is so well put what he says. He's saying, sometimes we clean for the pleasure of having a clean space to be in. But that, he says, is just a purely worldly activity, and it could even be non-virtuous. But when we do these activities all day long, we want to try to be doing this make things into virtuous activities. And so when we clean the space where we're going to meditate, we want to direct our mind towards something virtuous the whole time that we're cleaning. So what Venerable mentions is that, just mentally feel like you're inviting all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to this space. And so this is, she says, this is like analogous to us cleaning our mind. And this helps us to make our mind more receptive and can help our clarity. And also by doing this with this kind of, thought, like we're going to invite all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas here, helps to increase our sense of respect. So personally, I find that I have some faith in this. I often think when I'm cleaning the meditation hall, this will contribute to my ability to concentrate. We want a space that's, you just know when your desk is cluttered, sometimes you can't even think. My desk is always cluttered, but I have to clean it to a certain level before I can sometimes even think. We need an uncluttered and peaceful place for meditation. A place you find pleasant is what our text says. So away from, a very simple environment. And then, when we sweep and clean things, we want to think that we're clearing, just as we're clearing away the dirt, may my inner dirt and stains also be cleansed. So that's the kind of mind we want to have. And then we set up the symbols of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. So the Buddha's body is represented by the statue of the Buddha, and then we represent the Buddha's speech with a Dharma text, and then the mind with a stupa or a bell. And so when you do set up your altar, you want to put Shakyamuni Buddha, the statue, in the center because he's the founder of the teachings. And then if you have maybe pictures of your spiritual mentor, like say His Holiness or something, you would put that above. And then on the Any pictures or statues of deities go below. And then on the Buddha's right, you put the Dharma text, and on his left, you put the stupa or the bell. And you don't really put pictures of your relatives and things like that on your altar. A lot of people, I see that when I go into people's homes often, that they haven't heard these things, so that's not, you can have those in the room, but you generally don't put them on the altar. And then the second of the 6 is to make offerings. And so Lama Tsongkhapa says, obtain offerings without deceit and arrange them beautifully. So we can offer water bowls, flowers, fruit, anything you consider beautiful, but you want to offer the best quality. And so Venerable was saying, and I know she does this every day, she gets out of bed, makes 3 prostrations, and makes these offerings on her altar. And this really helps your mind. We all notice this here when we go to the meditation hall in the morning, no matter how tired we might be or whatever, it's so peaceful and so beautiful. It's really a nice way to start the day. It's very quiet. So it's important to think that we're doing this for a specific purpose. Sometimes you might have in your mind you want to impress somebody with your Buddhist symbols. That's not what we want to do. We're really trying to help ourselves to be able to help sentient beings. So we have to, take a look at your motivation for making offerings and putting on your shrine, things on your shrine. And so I always have liked this little story about Milarepa, because he was completely broke. He had no money. He was completely in poverty. But he gained high realizations because of his strong faith or conviction, and he had the correct motivation, and he had very energetic practice. And he made the best offerings. He didn't have anything external to give, but he totally gave his Dharma practice. He gave his heart totally to his Dharma practice, which is the best offering. And I think it, shows, worked. It worked. So, yeah, so we want to, with our Dharma practices, it's always about improving ourselves. It's not about external things. So same with our offerings. It's really what's happening mentally that counts. But we do have to procure things correctly. So pure offerings are pure in 2 regards. We procure them honestly through right livelihood. And so they describe 5 wrong livelihoods of flattery, hinting, giving a small gift in hopes of receiving a large one, coercion, and hypocrisy. So we don't want to do anything like that. We want to honestly have these offerings, and then we want to give them with a pure motivation. So it's not, really we want to expand our mind to this mind of bodhicitta. We don't want to just do it to have a pretty altar or to have some benefit for this life alone. And this helps us, this practice is one of the first of the 6 perfections. It helps us to learn how to take delight in giving. So that helps us to become less miserly. And these objects, when we offer to the Buddha, they're very strong objects of refuge. They're very strong objects. So there's a lot of merit. And then when you take down your altar, remember that you want to take the water and put it in a place where people don't walk on it. And you don't take the water and put it on your toilet or your sink. We usually water plants or put it where people aren't going to step on it. Things like that. Okay, and then the third is this sitting in the correct meditation posture, taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. So I have 3A, sitting in the correct posture. I'm going to break it up into 2 parts here. And what Venerable Children said is just make 3 prostrations and sit down. And our text says, sit on a comfortable seat in the 8-point posture, or in whatever position is comfortable. So then I find helpful and actually quite inspiring to read what Lama Tsongkhapa says, so I'll read this to you. In general, I find what he writes inspiring. So he says, sit up straight upon a comfortable seat in a suitable posture. Your legs either in the full or half lotus position, and then absorb yourself in the practices for going for refuge and developing the spirit of awakening. So, okay, so when we're learning about posture, this section of it is sit in a comfortable position and examine and calm the mind. That's all included in this 8-point posture of Varachana. And so first let's talk about just about it in general before we go into the 8 points. Just in general, it's best to sit in a full lotus or a half lotus or even cross-legged or on a chair. Kind of goes in that order. It's really best to be able to sit on the floor on a cushion, like small cushion. But we're going to show some things tonight because I've noticed around here we have some guests here, and I'm a little concerned about some people's posture here. I don't know if it will last the way a few people here are sitting. If you're young, you can get away with it for a while, but I think what I'm seeing is going to cause headaches, problems, and it's not really good for your meditation. The posture, any tradition you're in, Tai Chi, dance, physical therapy, all these things, everyone's in agreement about this posture in terms of the generalities of it. And so we need to address that a little bit. So, the most important thing is to have your spine up straight and not to be fidgeting or moving. Now this was something good for me to hear. Now I know I don't do this when I'm trying to concentrate, but I do rock quite a bit. So here's what, a reminder, if you're trying to work on your concentration, a rocking motion will cause a rocking motion in our minds. And it will have more mental wandering. So His Holiness told a story about this, and he said about 15 years ago there was a Geshe who was a great yogi, and he had lived in the mountains of Tibet. And he came out of India and he requested me to give some initiations. And then he says, I was terribly impressed. He didn't move even a bit during the entire empowerment. If we have the ability, we need to have this kind of posture. It comes from the strength of absorbed concentration. And I think actually most of us have experienced that when our mind is really there. We are still as a mountain. And then His Holiness also talked a little bit about eyeglasses, and he says for him he has better clarity and when he has his glasses on, and more stability when he has his glasses off, which is interesting. So, and then in general, this position needs to be firm but also relaxed, and having the mind up, having the spine upright, sitting erectly helps the mind to be more clear and more alert. The different postures that we go into, they are associated with mental states also, and anyone who's meditated very long kind of knows those. Okay, so now we're going to go over the 8-point posture of Buddha Varachana. So when you're sitting, you want, if possible, to be in the Vajra position, which is the left foot on the right thigh, the right foot on the left thigh. And then if you can't do that, cross-legged, or use one of those meditation bents, or a straight back chair with your feet flat on the floor. And then your hands, you have the right on the left, the thumbs touching, and you put your hands in your lap. This leaves some space here between your arms and your body. The back is straight, that's number 3. So 1 is the legs, the Vajra position, 2 is the hands, 3 is the back straight, 4 is the head is slightly inclined. And we're going to demonstrate this with a handy dandy nun. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. 5 is the mouth closed. And the teeth, how do I say this? You have your lips and your teeth in a natural position. The tongue is on the roof of the mouth. This helps to prevent thirst and excess saliva. And I find that it works if you say the word mine, M-I-N-E, that your tongue will go to the right place with the tip of your tongue touching the upper teeth and the upper palate at the same time, that spot. Okay, that's number 5. And then 6 is you want your shoulders level, which actually I don't always see in our meditation. Sometimes I see. And that, the space between the arms and the body. And then 7 is the eyes. And so, in this meditation, this is a posture taught for stabilizing the mind. And the eyes for stabilizing the mind are down. They're kind of looking along the plane of the tip of your nose, down towards the floor. They're not really looking at anything in particular. This is the position of the eyes that's recommended for cultivating serenity. The eyes being slightly open prevents drowsiness, and being in a well-lit room also prevents drowsiness. If you find that you're quite excited in your mind, it's said that you might want to face a wall. Basically, don't have a bunch of junk in front of you to look at, like all these cords and things. I find that I sometimes move the things in front of me when we're in our winter retreat because I need an open space without a lot of clutter. When I do stabilizing meditation, I find it quite distracting to have a bunch of junk in front of me, even my puja table. So if you deliberately close your eyes, it becomes easier to lose the meditative state. And then later when you arise from your cushion, let me re-say this. When you have your eyes open, if they close naturally, that's fine. But if you always meditate with your eyes closed, then when you get up, there's this big break between meditation and seeing things. If you meditate with your eyes slightly open, you're used to actually kind of tuning that stuff out and kind of staying within. And then when you get up, you can actually do that easier. So it helps you to continue that meditative type of mind when you're doing things throughout the day. So, okay, so then now we're going to go and do a little demonstration, and then we'll go back to point 8. Some people here are sitting in the middle of the cushion, and you actually want to kind of sit on the front because you're trying to get a tilt down, kind of. Okay, so you usually sit on the front of the cushion. And then, okay, so naturally we have an inward curve in our lower back, like it's concave. And there's a lot of ways to teach this. Tsongkhapa says your nose is in line with your navel. I'm going to do it from the way I teach it. If you lift your heart, like there's a string pulling on the top of your head, and you're lifting your heart up. If you just kind of think about this sternum here, the chest bone, whatever you call it, if you find that you're kind of over like this a lot, you don't have to have your head down. Your head's probably going to be like that. Here is you. You are like this, and it's hard to see you sitting like that. And so you need to lift your sternum, and that puts a little curve in your back. You never have a curve in your lower back. Your back is rounded like that. You can't sit right in a C curve. We're naturally built to have an inward curve here, an outward curve here, and an inward curve here. So you want this bone in line with this bone, which lifts you up. Okay, the position of the head is usually fine if you just lift your sternum, like lift your heart up. Now you, on the other hand, are always like this. You don't go like that. You just stay like this. You're completely a C here. And I've never actually seen you. I'm told that your back will go straight here. We'll do this, but I've never seen you do it. So we can do this together sometime. So we need to, this is good for people to see. So I think those are the main things I was concerned about. Then the position of the head, once you take care of this, it's usually fine. It should be slightly down. If you find your head like this, you're probably going to have a lot of thoughts. And if you find your head like this, you're probably going to fall asleep. Okay, so mostly it comes, you keep your spine erect and you just kind of lift your heart up and the head will take care of itself. You might have to, you just tilt a little bit there. The motion comes from about there, about at the ears. So when they say tilt your head down, they're not saying go like this. They're saying go like this. Everybody follow? Okay, we did it. Thank you. And for you, and maybe you too, I think it would help, because mainly our problem is our hips are too tight. And so this is the problem. So when what you need is you need your rear end above your knees. You need your hips above your knees. We're too tight in our hips to make that happen, most of us, because we don't sit on the floor from the time we're young. We quit. We sit in chairs once we get into school. And so what you usually need is a higher cushion. Like if you have, can you put this other cushion under you? You don't particularly need this, but this is pretty high. But for those of us who even, if you're up higher, you can see your hips are above your knees. Then it allows you to get your spine in the right position. So that's the trick. And even me, when I can't sit on the floor because my hips are too tight, I have trouble. When I sit in a chair, I have to keep my knees below my hips. And a lot of times our chairs aren't like that, but sometimes I don't even put my feet flat on the floor because I have to get my knees below my hips. Anyway, that would probably help. Okay, so that was the first 7, and now we're up to the 8th, which is, so now we're up to the part of the posture that relates to the mind. And it's because we oftentimes hear of the 7-point Varachana position, but there's also the 8. The 8 is just this 8th point, which is calming the mind by observing the breath. So when in these, how do we say it? Yeah, in this point 3A, sitting in the correct meditation posture, the 8 points, 7 of them are your posture, and the 8 is calming the mind with breathing meditation. And so Venerable really was quite clear on this, and this is something that I think is really important. When you sit down, you need to get your mind to neutral, so that you can do the contemplations and do what you want to do. You can't have your mind distracting here and there. So we focus on our breath as we did tonight. And this, there's a lot you can learn about that, but that's kind of the gist of in this. You need to get your mind to neutral somehow and calm down. So in terms of the breathing, we spent a fair amount of time with that tonight. A couple points just to add are that we want to breathe naturally. It should be without any sound. It doesn't we're not doing breath of fire that they do in Kundalini Yoga. It's not that. So without any noise or effort, you don't force your breath. Yeah, that's kind of the main things. Okay, and so the breath is a meditation object for both Buddhists and non-Buddhists. It has many purposes. It can be used for developing serenity, but it can also be used for developing insight. So both of them are used as, it's an object of meditation. It doesn't tell you what you're going to do with it. That's kind of the point. A lot of people don't understand that, and so it's important. There's not just the breath, and that's the end of the story. Okay, and also what Venerable really brought out in this teaching is, it helps you to examine your mind, because our text says, examine your mind well. And so, by observing the breath, she was talking about how it can give you insight into what's going on in your mind, because the breathing pattern is related to what's happening in the mind. So, you really want to examine that. And so, examine your mind well, is my mind peaceful? What's going on? Is it open? Is it virtuous? Am I angry? So you have to really, before you move on out of this, place, you want to kind of deal with that and get to this, neutral state. Get rid of any strong emotions. And these antidotes for all these are taught later in the Lamrim. And now we're up to 3B, taking refuge in generating bodhicitta. So now that we have examined our mind, we're in a fairly positive state. We want to have this positive state of mind to take refuge and generate our bodhicitta motivation, thinking about how we're going in a great direction in our life that's a safe direction with the heart of bodhicitta. And now in this part, we often use a visual aid, and I think this is how Venerable kind of shortened this practice, is she has us doing the visualization of the lineage before we do the abbreviated recitations, but actually there's kind of two visualizations in the longer way that this is done. So but anyway, when we do refuge, you can just think about these things conceptually, which I think is quite powerful, and you can also enhance it by like having the visualization that we're doing in this practice in front of you, the Buddha and all the holy beings. That's the order that she taught it in here, just one visualization, all those Buddhas there. But if that's hard for you to think of a lot of these, there's beautiful pictures that, I don't find these very hard to remember the order of these things if you get a picture of this, but even if you find that hard, you can just have the Buddha there to start with. And then over time, then you can put in all the other figures. But the main thing is this sense of inspiration flowing from them into you. That's the most important thing, is this sense of, we're using a visual aid to make us receptive. And this helps to create a stronger feeling by using our imagination in this way. So it doesn't matter how many people you have in your refuge, in this refuge field, that's not the point. The actual refuge is actually the true cessations and the paths and the mental continuum of aryas, these very highly realized beings. So that helps us to have a lot of confidence, knowing that the real refuge is the Dharma, and in that the real refuge is the realizations and the cessations. So these are completely reliable. So that helps us to have a lot of confidence and faith. It helps us to know something about our potential and our strength. So we don't want to do this as a rote formula. I think that's the biggest point here. Okay. We've talked, I think, enough about bodhicitta tonight. At least as much as has come up in this teaching so far. And then next we're into the 4 immeasurable attitudes. And when we say that verse, this is really another way of reinforcing our motivation for the practice. And really, I mean, if you just think about it, it's really a lot of our deepest aspirations are contained within these. We really want people to be happy. We want to have this kind of loving kindness towards people. We don't want people to suffer. And how are we going to get like that? I mean, we need to have the kind of joy. We can wish that for others and for ourselves. And we need to have a mind that's equanimous and wish that for others. So I don't think you could it would be impossible to spend too much time on that section, I would say. Okay, so then Venerable asks us to add this verse after the 4 immeasurables. In particular, for the sake of all mother sentient beings, by all means, I will quickly, very quickly, realize perfect consummate Buddhahood. To that end, I will now meditate on the stages of the path to awakening by the means of the profound practice of Guru Deity Yoga. So this is another verse that really is resetting the motivation. Quickly, very quickly, she said, could be the Sutra path and the Tantra path, or it could be the 3 lower Tantras and the higher Tantra. And then Guru Deity Yoga, or Guru Yoga, is when we visualize our spiritual mentor as the Buddha. Okay, now we're up to number 4, where we visualize the lineage gurus. So in Tsongkhapa's text, he says, imagine that seated in the space before you are the gurus of the vast and profound lineages, as well as the immeasurable Buddhas, noble bodhisattvas, Prayeka Buddhas, the solitary realizers, Shravakas, the hearers, and those who abide in the Buddha's word. Then visualize the field for accumulating the collections of merit and sublime wisdom. So here we're using in our mind's eye, these mental images. And this is, in our verse, what I wanted to just review quickly were some of the symbols so that people can get familiar with the verse of the visualization that we're doing every week. So in our verse, in the space in front of me on a precious throne, both high and wide, supported by 8 great snow lions on a seat of multicolored lotus, sun, and moon discs. The lotus, sun, and moon discs represent the three principal aspects of the path. And the Buddha is sitting on these, showing that he's mastered renunciation, bodhicitta, and correct view. And it goes on. Is my kind main spiritual mentor in the form of the conqueror Shakyamuni Buddha. Shakyamuni. So that you now, at that point, you can imagine your teacher, if you have one, in the form of the physical form of the Buddha, or if you don't, you can just imagine the Buddha. His color is made of pure gold. On his head is the crown protuberance, and that's something that the Buddhas developed due to their extraordinary merit. He has one face, two hands. So the right hand touches the earth. That's the earth-touching gesture when the Buddha became fully awakened, and the earth goddess was his witness. You know, a spirit or deva said, how do we know that you're really fully awakened? Who's going to attest to this? And then the earth goddess appears and says, I will attest to it. He's fully awakened. So that represents that. And then his left hand holds an alms bowl full of nectar. And this is like a wisdom nectar that cures all of our afflictions, all of our sufferings. Let's see. He wears the 3 saffron-colored monastic robes. So monastics have 3 robes: their upper robe, their lower robe, 2 upper robes and a lower robe. The body made of pure light. So this is reminding us that we want to visualize the Buddha as a real being, not like a statue or a painting. We imagine a being made of light, a real live being. Okay? It's not a human body. The signs and marks of a Buddha, those were the things like long earlobes, the hair curl, the number of teeth. You know, there's all these things that are described, the length of the arms, webs here in the fingers, and all that. Emanates a flood of light. Let's see, where does that come in here? Yeah, just like that. His body, made of pure light and adorned with the signs and marks of Buddha, emanates a flood of light. So this is what we imagine as like a wisdom light coming into us and touching all, going into all sentient beings. And that really helps to lift us up. It's pretty hard. It's true what she says. It's pretty hard to be depressed when you're doing this visualization. Okay, and then he's surrounded by my direct and indirect spiritual mentors. So your direct spiritual mentors are the people that you study with personally, and the indirect ones are your teachers' teachers, the lineage. And the various deities like Chinrazi, Manjushri, Tara, and Vajrapani. The Arya Dharma protectors, those are Dharma protectors who have realized emptiness, not common Dharma protectors. The members of the field of merit look upon me with contentment. And then she actually, one of the times she did this, she actually extended it, contentment, and it was acceptance and find it there. Yeah, kindness, compassion, and contentment. So we need to really take the time to try to allow ourselves to do that psychologically. Okay. In turn, at the thought of their compassion and virtue, I have great faith in them. So that's the end of our verse there. And so there she taught about the 3 kinds of faith. And basically, none of these are a blind faith. There's 3 levels of faith that are described in Buddhism. And they're a kind of admiring faith where we admire the qualities. Sometimes she's called that a clear faith. So we admire the wisdom and the love and compassion and all those kind of qualities. And actually, I can't remember what the word Jeffrey Hopkins, that we take some teachings from. it's like this point, that this removes the dirt from our mind, and our mind becomes very clear with a vivid reflection on the 3 jewels. You know how it is like that when your mind is like that? There's a real clearness to the mind then, as you want to try to, that's a joyous state that you want to try to cultivate. And then the second is the faith of, well, I have to say, these have been taught in different orders. I'm putting them in the order that I understand them best. The next is the faith of conviction, convinced faith. So here we've learned the teachings and we've thought about them, they make sense to us, and then in that we want to, like we understand the Four Noble Truths to a certain point at least, so we're convinced. We understand that there's a way out of our suffering, and so that's a kind of faith of conviction. And then that leads to this third faith, which is aspiring faith. And that's where we actually really want to do this ourselves. We have enough understanding of the qualities, enough understanding of the Dharma and how it works, that we actually want to do this ourselves. So none of them are a blind faith. And then we're on the 5th point now. Back to this. So on the 6 preparatory practices, the 5th one is contemplating the 7 limbs, or the 7-limb prayer. And so I did that in our guided meditation tonight, so I'll just give a little introduction that Lama Tsongkhapa gives to this, rather than going through all the parts of it. We need, in order to progress along the path, we need all kinds of cooperative conditions for our mind. We need to accumulate the collections, of merit, which are like the favorable conditions, and we need to purify our mind from all the obscurations. It's kind of like the verse that Venerable said at the very beginning. That's kind of what our practice is about. She explained this to me once when I first moved here. It's like our garden out there. Our minds are like these weeds, which are very strong, and the little beautiful plants that are kind of weak. And so we need to pull out the weeds, and we need to give all the conditions to these beautiful little plants so they can grow and get firm and strong and everything. So that's kind of what we're doing in our practice. If you lack these kind of cooperative conditions, it's extremely difficult to produce the path, which is what you're doing in your mind. It's not like you're building a road, you're doing these things in your mind. So even if you take pains to sustain the meditations are the substantial causes of the path, but these are the cooperative conditions. So it's extremely difficult to produce the path, even if you take pains to sustain the meditations that are the substantial causes of the path. Okay? Does that make sense? There's always the substantial cause, but you need all the conditions. It's like having a seed, but not having anything for it to grow in. So that we have to be accumulating merit and purifying. So you do this with this 7-limb prayer. These are the crucial points for accumulating the collection of merit and purifying the mind of obscurations. And so we do this. We've done that visualization with that visualization in front of us. We do this practice, and we did that tonight. So when we do it ourselves, we want to make sure we reflect on the meaning. Don't just blow through the thing. You won't get that much out of it then. So the advice that Venerable has given that helps this a lot with prayers that you do a lot is to listen to yourself saying them as you say them. That actually helps you to reflect. And what another friend of mine does is he changes the words slightly. Like he won't say rejoicing in other good qualities. He'll list out things, He just changes, so he's saying things by meaning rather than always by rote. Actually how we have them. Okay, so the 7-limb prayer we've gone through. There's a lot more that could be said about it, but we don't really have time, so we're going to skip that. There's not hard to find these teachings. Venable's website, Lama Tsongkhapa, is very easy to understand, and Geshe Sopa's book is really well put out. Okay, but to summarize, the 7 limbs are kind of into three aspects: accumulation, purification, and bringing about an expansion and lack of dissipation. So, let's see. Actually, I'll explain which are which. So, in some of them, we're accumulating merit and sublime wisdom. So that's where we do the bowing, the offering, rejoicing, and the requesting that they stay and teach. Those are all things that are generating the merit, the accumulation of merit. And then the confession is the one where we're removing obstacles. So I will say that again. Okay, to summarize, the 7 limbs are included, there are 3 aspects: accumulation, purification, and bring about an expansion and a lack of dissipation. So although we might not have that much merit by doing this kind of practice, we can kind of enhance it. It helps when we do these things. Now, the last part of that is dedication, and that is really important, because if we don't dedicate our merit properly, it kind of just will fizzle out, is what it boils down to. So we want to dedicate in a way that it will be inexhaustible. It won't ever run out until all sentient beings have become fully awakened. It's really important to understand that. So if you dedicate all that you did today to sleeping well tonight, that's what you'll get. If you dedicate all that you did today to having a good week, that's the best you'll get from it. If you dedicate all that you do to attaining full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings, that merit, that dedication will steer and will continue unexhausted until that comes about. Does that make sense? It's quite an important thing. So it's inexhaustible results. And also, because if later we become angry or we generate wrong views, we can destroy these roots of virtue that we've created, because that's the power of wrong views and anger. So they can destroy things. But if we dedicate them, it's said that helps to prevent that. We can lessen that. Okay, so that was offering the 7 limbs. And then the last is offering the mandala and requesting inspiration from the root and lineage spiritual mentors. So I tried to spend a lot of time on this tonight so we could just do it by doing rather than talking about it. So when we do this, we do this to help to have a sense of connection, really, with all of the practitioners, all of the wonderful things they've done. And so when we request inspiration, we imagine the light and nectar flowing into us from them, and that helps our confidence and helps our enthusiasm. So I'd like to read something that Lama Tsongkhapa said about this. Then once you have pictured in your mind the objects of the mandala and have offered the mandala, make the following supplication many times with strong aspiration. So this is the request prayer, which I think I like request prayers. Please bless all living beings, my mothers and myself, so that we may quickly stop all flawed states of mind, beginning with not respecting the teacher and ending with conceiving the signs of true existence of the 2 kinds of self. Bless us so that we may easily produce all flawless states of mind, beginning with respecting the teacher and ending with knowing the reality of selflessness. Please bless us to quell all inner and outer obstacles. So that's another way to think of our request prayer. And then once we've completed all those 6 preparatory practices, then when we're doing our meditation, usually you dissolve this whole visualization into the central figure of the Buddha. Then the Buddha comes on the crown of your head, facing the same direction as you. Then we usually have our hands in this position, and this is when we do the mantra, the Buddha's mantra that we did tonight. Tayata Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Soha. And we do that, receiving all this inspiration, all this purification. And then from there, that we go into our actual meditation session. So you can do this all very quickly, but it takes a while to learn it. It doesn't take long to do all this. It is a little challenging when you do this a lot to keep it real fresh. You have to learn how to work with that. But you do have to learn at some point the different parts so that these prayers have meaning. So that they're like, how would you say this? They're like taking, okay, we felt that tonight, didn't we, a little bit? We started off, we sat down, we were wherever we were at, right? We did all the guided meditation part, and at the end I said, how are you feeling then? Look at the texture of your mind. I remember listening to an audio of my teacher, Darshan Rinpoche, the Sakya teacher, and someone asked him, because this is how we think about meditation, why do we have to do all these prayers? Why don't we just sit down and meditate? It's just such a great question. I was like, yeah, why do we have to do all these prayers? Why are we doing all this stuff first? Don't you have things in the wrong order here? That's what they were saying. He said, aren't we doing this all in the wrong order? It was a really good question. And he's like, you have to have the blessings. This is how they do it in their church. You have to have the blessings before you're going to be able to meditate, But, if we think about it this in the way we kind of talk more, it's like, look what happens with your mind when you do this. You're kind of like, you think of your mind as a wound, and we have to take care of it, or think of it, a better analogy is like the garden. We've got this seed there, and we've got to get all the conditions right so that we can do something with that seed. The seed of wisdom that we're growing needs this field of merit to grow in, and so that's what these practices help us to do. Okay, if there's any questions, we can take a couple, and then we gotta stop. But I actually kept it on the time. Pretty good. Yeah. Not that I have any answers, but I might be able to look it up. You give people a chance in case they're going to type something in.
Just say that I so appreciate you going through this again, because it really freshens it back up, because it can get so rote.
Yeah.
It's so lovely.
Yeah. I know. I love this teaching. I love the teachings at the beginning of the Lam Rim. And now, from just the bit I read today, I was like, wow, I need to read these again. I find it so inspiring. I love hearing about the teachings on how to listen to the teachings. I love those teachings. And these I love, they're just like, I'm always amazed how much they teach at the beginning. When we went to college, no one taught us how to learn. I guess they did teach people eventually, but when I was going to school, you didn't have this, anything around how to go about it. You just kind of went in there and floundered around. But in the Dharma, it's so different that, it's so laid out. And so I love what Geshe Sopa says about this. Everything is contained in this, and all the gathas that we do, in a way, if we think of that as okay, now we're on the cushion, now we're off the cushion, we're going to use these gathas to make every day, every part of the day, it's good to think of our lives that way. And when I was reading that from his book, I was just thinking about, what is Geshe Sopa doing now? He's so amazing for any of us who have seen him. He's been practicing diligently his whole life, making one part of his day on the cushion, the other part in between sessions. And now it's paying off. It's just so evident to anyone who's seen him. He's completely, his body is like nothing, hardly any energy left. He's being cared for, even his saliva, getting out of chairs, everything. But his mind is it's kind of always on the cushion now, I think. So it's really inspirational to see how, when you practice in the way that these great masters teach, what's possible.
What does Tayata mean in the mantra?
Tayata. I think it's I might be wrong on this, and we have the meaning of it on our website actually, but I actually think it's more like a the word isn't greeting, but an introductory statement. That's what I want to say. I can't think of the right word.
Preamble.
Yeah,
It is thus.
Hmm?
You're teaching the Dalai Lama Day, I thought he said it is thus.
Yeah, it could be something like it is thus, something like, yeah, it's like this or something. It's like this, something like that. Yes.
What is Idam Guru Ratnam Mandala Kanuya Tayami?
Idam Guru mandalakam niyatayami. I don't know the translation, but what's happening, it's in the blue book. Here, pull out the blue book and I'll read it. But what's happening there is at that point, you're actually making the offering, and your mind should be very joyful. This should be said, the idam guru ratna mandalakam niyatayami should be said with a lot of joy and energy, not yeah.
Yeah.
Do we know where it is? Because she doesn't.
Yeah, here. Yeah.
It's
Please accept.
I offer to the guru.
Rotten jewel. Offer this jeweled mandala.
Yeah, Rotten's jewel.
I think Venerable Haridas said I offer to the guru of the full universe. I asked.
this isn't translated here.
Maybe it's in the red.
It's just all the,
We have it in one book.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in the red.
yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the translations word for word. The, guru is lama, is like teacher. Ratna is like a jewel. Mandala is the whole universe, I guess you might say. I don't know the other words.
Yeah.
I know the meaning.
Please accept this jeweled mandala.
Yeah, maybe it's like that. Please accept this jewel mandala. Yes.
Is the purpose of the mandala offering to accumulate merit or to practice not attaching to pleasures?
You know, that's a good question. Do I have to repeat them?
So is the purpose of the mandala offering to accumulate merit or to practice not attaching to pleasures?
Is the purpose of the mandala offering to accumulate merit or not to attach to pleasures, is the question.
Practice not attaching to pleasures.
Yeah. Well, one way of doing the mandala offering is you're offering everything in the universe in order to receive teachings and generate realizations in your mind stream. But when you do the mandala offering as a practice, you're also doing it to reduce your attachment to objects. I mean, we're attached to almost everything. So you're trying to get in a better relationship with things by giving them away. You give them into the care of the Buddha. And I don't have realization in this, so I'd like to speak from experience, but I don't. But I know that from my own experience of like when there's something beautiful and you see it and you could get really attached to the beauty, or you can offer the beauty. It's kind of that feeling of you're letting go of the attachment there. And so, yeah, I think I've heard it said by Jeffrey Hopkins, like, you're entrusting it into the care of the Buddha, they'll be in much better hands. I think it helps us to relinquish things. So it helps to work against the mind of miserliness in that regard. So it's really, you're doing both. But when we do it in this prayer, I'm usually thinking about, in order to receive teachings and generate realizations in my mind stream. When I'm actually doing the Nundro right now with the mandala, which is why I can say I don't have any realizations. I'm doing it every day. And I'm supposed to be meditating on attachment every day. Every session I do this. So maybe in a few years I'll let you have something else to say. You had a question?
Actually, it was this question, when we are advised to include people we're attached to.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be able to conceptually explain what that means to put someone in the care of the Buddha.
Oh, well, if you offer to the Buddha people that you care for, you've kind of like, in a way you could say you've given it away. Think of it like your possessions. Think of it like, say, maybe you've had a nice vase and you offered it to, let's say, the Abbey to put on the shrine or something. You offered it to that. It's not yours, right? And you can kind of let go of it. The whole mine is gone. So you do that with everything, because we have this grasping at self and grasping at mine as a part of it. It's like when you go outside, if you had your car out there and there was a big scratch on it, it would really bother you. But if it was somebody else's car, it would be like, hey, look at that scratch. So if we can give these things away, even people that we're attached to, then we can get rid of this over-exaggeration of attachment. So that's how you do it. You're just doing it mentally, but still that helps us because we're setting it up and we're holding it with a different attitude. Is that it?
Someone seemed to have typed a word. I'm just clarifying what the question is.
The book by Geshe Sopa is called Steps on the Path to Enlightenment. There's 3 volumes out. This information is from the first volume. And in the books by Lama Tsongkhapa, the Great Treatise on the Path, the Lamrim Chimo, there's 3 volumes total. They're all out, and this is in the first volume.
So the person's question is giving away the same as entrusting?
Giving away in your mind, when you give something away in your mind, you could use the same, it would work to say that, you're entrusting it. I mean, I'm not sure if they're talking literally, when we, might not. Literally, when I give something to you, I've given it away. Literally, in a worldly way, when I entrust something to someone else, that doesn't necessarily mean that to me. It could be I gave it away, but it could be I just gave it to them to take care of. That's how I understand that word. But in the Dharma sense, when you're doing...
Giving away to the Buddha.
Yeah, when you're something that a mental offering, I don't think it would matter which it is, because you're doing it in your mind. If it's a mental offering, is something that's imagined. I'm using it that way. If it was something physical like this, I mean, I guess it depends on how you define those words. Like if I give this to another person, it's not mine. If I entrust it to someone else, it means I can get it back later, is how I understand that word.
Could you explain what it means, entrust?
Entrust, give something into someone else's trust to take care of. So it's a nice way to think about people that you're attached to. Because like how skillful are we in helping others that we're attached to especially? We're like kind of enmeshed. It's kind of good mentally to put those in the care of the Buddha, is one way I would say that.
But you can entrust too with your mind?
Yeah, you can entrust with your mind, because our imagination, yeah.
Yeah, I'm giving it away to you because I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm just...
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
I say that's more giving, like you entrust your money to the bank to look after it. You don't give your money to the bank.
I think the objects versus people thing in the mandala might be related to this. Is the same person, perhaps?
Do you
I don't get that.
Did you get your question answered?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe you have to play with it and see what it's like. When you do the practice, it might be good to experience what it means to mentally give away things
I think...
that you still have in your bedroom. You know what I mean? Maybe you have something in your bedroom that is kind of special to you, that you wouldn't want to lose. And then, okay, if that nice thing is, I really like this clock. I actually do like the clock in my room because it's loud. And I can't wake up without a loud clock. So if that clock breaks, if somebody takes that clock, I might get upset, right? I own that clock. But I could, in my mind, give that clock away. And maybe I would have less of this feeling of mine. And that's healthy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And you still have the thing in your bedroom, but you don't have to be so exaggerated about its importance.
I think what I mean by that is like, I know that I'm like, it's mine and
Right. Yeah.
whatever. But by giving it away and giving it away, I entrust that,
Right.
that
Without a sense of loss. This is how it allows us to do. It's like we want to learn to give with delight. Real giving it makes the mind delighted, and there's no sense of loss. And so this is a way that we work ourselves to that.
I think it's what trying to say is that I'm so confused. I don't see the difference. Like I don't recognize the mind. I don't recognize the attachment. I don't recognize all of that. And by giving it away, I entrust that whatever I don't understand, eventually I will.
Yeah.
So I trust that practice.
See, for me, it would be different. It would be for things that I have extreme attachment to. Entrusting is the first step before actually letting it go completely. There's something about entrusting that there's a trust from my side to give it, and that I could mentally actually do. And I haven't given it away, but it's the first step because I still have attachment to it. So entrusting it into the care of the Buddha, it's like I'm partially there, but I'm not completely there. When I can freely give it without a sense of loss, that's beyond the entrusting part. That's the part that the attachment has been lessened enough that I could not ever need to ask for it back and I would be okay. So for me, entrusting is just a little bit closer to not having to totally relinquish it. Which some things I really love, like beautiful forests. I mean, I entrust the Buddha to those because there's a lot of attachment to beautiful things.
Yeah, so it's like knowing the distinction in your mind of when something is really given and when you're on your way there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
You already hear the mandala offering, and then it says also the objects of attachment, aversion and ignorance, like friends, enemies and strangers.
Right.
So, could you explain briefly about aversion and enemies part, why, or even? So
when we do the mandala offering, we have the verse giving away the object of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, friends, enemies, and strangers, my body, wealth, and enjoyments. I offer these without any sense of loss. So I think that personally, I can only give you my opinion, maybe other people here know from the teachings. For me, this is a training in equanimity. It's a training in me to be able to give everything away and not be and realizing that I'm designating these things to be objects of attachment, aversion, especially, because I have ignorance, I'm making my friends and enemies. I'm designating all of that. So for me, because I do this practice every day, that's where my mind goes with that. It helps me to kind of balance that out and not have these things so solidly labeled. But I haven't actually heard a teaching on more. Does anyone else? Wait, just one sec. Has anyone else heard a specific teaching that they recall clearly?
So long ago, it's quite vague, but along the line of what?
Okay, so it's kind of similar to that. That's just where it goes. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. I remember listening one time Venerable said that like you entrust your enemies kind of like to the Buddha because the Buddha can take better care of them.
Right, yeah. We entrust our enemies to the Buddha because they can definitely take better care of them. Yeah, we have to try to... It's kind of nice when you think about that. I think from the side of the practitioner, when you do something like that, for me, here's how it works. Sometimes people are my enemies because I care for them and I can't help them. And so I get frustrated, and then I have aversion. It's not so uncommon. It happens in families all the time. You love these people, they're driving you crazy, and you don't know what to do, and so you have aversion. So, if I entrust them to the Buddha, it's like, it helps, because I'm actually doing something. I'm actually doing something kind, and it helps my heart to be more kind.
Recognizing that we only have so much capacity, but the Buddha has limitless capacity.
Yeah.
He doesn't see them in that way.
Yeah, because, for me, it still comes down to equanimity, because I want to have an equanimous mind, not with attachment, not with anger, not with, what happens to me is like what's the near enemy? It's the indifference. The near enemy of ignorance is this indifference to people. That's whatever, and you don't want to have that. And so this is a way to work with your own mind, not to, just toss people in these categories because you can't figure out what else to do. Well, this is what's so great about having a practice, because there's always something to do. Maybe you need to actually work with your mind first. This has been a big lesson for me. When I have very entangled situations with people, family or whatever, my first response is I need to do something. You know, I have to say something or go there, you know, fix it, whatever. No, the first thing I need to do is I need to get my mind free of any attachment, anger, and confusion, calm, so I actually can figure out what I might actually do. So there's always something to do. Okay, let's dedicate before any more questions come. Thank you, everybody. So please, if this is old stuff, try to learn it so that we can help people who are new, because we always have new people.